My name is Anne-Marie Pastor. I'm from Finlandia Foundation National. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce Finlandia Foundation National's new Executive Director, Tommy Flanagan. This is his second day at office, and he is totally plunging into his role like into cold ice water right away. Last 4 years, Tommy has been working as SPAC co-director, language program officer at Goethe Institute in Washington, D.C. He received his Master of Arts degree from Georgetown University, concentration in German and European Studies, and his Bachelor of Arts degree from Pacific Lutheran University in Political Science and German, including a minor in Global Studies. In addition to this, he has taken courses at Åbo Academy in Turku, Finland. He has also been part of Finlandia Foundation's Young Leaders Board since its inauguration, and therefore well connected with us already. It is important to note that besides English, he speaks German, Finnish, and Swedish, and some Spanish. So the communication with him should not be a problem. So welcome, Tommy. We are super excited to have you on board with us. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie, for the welcome. And yes, it is my second day plunging into the cold water, as you say, which we'll talk about today, has some major health benefits to it. So I wouldn't want to do it any other way. National Sauna Week is a great way to start in this role, and I'm glad to be here, and also hope very much that I can brush up on some of those languages that were mentioned by Anne-Marie. So without further ado, let's get started with our discussion today. I'm joined here by Katja Pantzar, who is joining us from Helsinki today. She, of course, is Canadian-American and has spent time in different cities in Canada, a stint in New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken, and in the United Kingdom as well. So she's well-traveled. She's seen lots of parts of the world. She's a journalist, an editor, a mother, and a sauna and cold water expert, or extraordinaire, if you will. So we're really lucky to have her here today. We kind of have two books that we're focusing on, two recent books that Katja has written, that you have written, Katja, The Finnish Way from 2018, and the Everyday Sisu, Tapping into Finnish Fortitude for Happiness, a More Resilient Life, which is very recent, 2022. And I should mention also, and you can talk about this a little more, there's a third book on the way that is called The Power of Hot and Cold, From Sauna to Sea, that you are actually co-authoring with Karita Harju, who I also see in the attendees today. So we're glad to have, you know, all the experts in the room today. So I got a chance, I have the books right here sitting in front of me, and I got to read them over the past couple weeks, and starting with The Finnish Way, I would say that this is a must read for like anybody who maybe doesn't know a bunch about Finland, who's going to go to Finland, because there's a lot of really interesting nuanced cultural things about Finland that you really pull out in this book through kind of sauna, through Sisu, through some of the Finnish concepts that people sort of are familiar with. So I think it's kind of like a Finnish culture 101. It's a travel prep, and it certainly is partially a self-help, like life improvement book. So it covers a lot of ground in few pages. It has some quick tips in there at the end of each chapter that you can refer to. So you can say, what did I just learn? And you can review that. So I guess I'll just turn the floor over to you quickly, Katja, to say a few welcoming remarks from your side, and maybe about yourself, anything I might have missed.
Thank you, Tommy. That was an excellent, thanks for the introduction. The only thing, I don't have any American roots. As you introduced me, it's actually Canada and Finland, but I've traveled a lot in America. I have a fabulous American publisher, Penguin Random House in New York, and a lot of very good American friends. So I could take an honorary citizenship there. Yeah, I'm just happy to be here. Maybe the best place to start is to tell you that I actually started the day with a cold water dip and a sauna after my jog here in Helsinki, where it was minus 12 degrees Celsius this morning, which is very cold. And having a hot sauna to start up the day was a great way to get going.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, we like to hear that. And this fits so well into the whole week that we have planned here. We've kind of visited the history of the sauna. At the beginning of the week, we've talked about the public sauna. We've talked about what Americans kind of compromise in terms of sauna in the US or maybe North American culture versus in Finland. So I guess one of the first questions I would ask you maybe is, because you weren't born and raised in Finland, right? So maybe there's a memory that you have. What was your first kind of initial experience with sauna, right? And what was that like, and how do you view that now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So even though I have Finnish roots, I was born in Finland, but I wasn't raised in Finland. We left when I was 3 and moved to New Zealand first and then to Canada, where largely I grew up on Canada's west coast. I've also lived in Toronto, in the middle or the other side of Canada, as we say, before in Vancouver. And my experiences, my early experiences, I would say probably until I was a young adult, were that it was something that you were supposed to do when you visited Finland. And my parents had a sauna in Vancouver, on the outskirts of Vancouver at one point, but it was not something that I understood. It wasn't something I really enjoyed. I think it was something that I thought was for somebody else. And I think part of that had to do with growing up in North America, a lot of body image issues and the idea of, being in a bathing suit or going naked just was, yeah, I didn't get it at all. It wasn't actually until I moved to Finland when I was in my 30s for a work assignment, wonderful work assignment, which ended up taking me all around the world. And not only did I learn more about the world as a writer and a journalist and an editor, but I learned way more about Finland than I ever could have hoped to, partly because I thought with Finnish roots that I already understood Finnish culture, but I really didn't. And one of the key things was understanding sauna, which I got to know more about it and understand it, but it really wasn't until I became completely addicted to winter swimming, which is taking a icy dip in very cold water, followed up very often by a hot sauna. And that was when I realized, wow, the power of alternating hot and cold contrast therapy, but also realizing, researching more about what is sauna and what does it mean and understanding it in a different way, but also finding my own Zen, as it were, how to relax in the sauna. And now I don't think I could live without it. For example, this morning was just like, did I ever need that? Yeah. That hot steam.
It's a fantastic thing, right? Something that you didn't have before that's become such a central part of your life, especially living in Finland, right? Where you kind of, it just is a part of life in a way that, isn't understood maybe in other parts of the world. We've heard a lot of that this week, especially kind of with the history of it. We had a session yesterday about the sauna spirits as well, and not the alcohol, but the actual spirits connected with the history, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But maybe to kind of go one step back on the concept of sauna, I assume most people in the audience today do understand what that is, but maybe from your own kind of definition, what is it that makes the Finnish sauna? What is it that makes that specifically Finnish? What are like the elements that have to be there for it to be like a Finnish sauna?
The great question. And I think a really very relevant one, especially as it's trending around the world. And then you'll see, saunas that in other parts of the world that, for example, don't have löyly,
right?
And that's not a sauna. That is not a sauna. So in Finland, I think what I would say is there's about 3.3 million of them saunas in a country of about 5.5 million. And it's really an essential part of life. It's a place where you restore mind and body, you relax, you meet with friends, you talk about whatever is on your mind. It's a place where you're accepted as you are. You leave your titles, you leave your Rolex, your bicycle, your BMW, your job title, everything behind. And you go into this space where really the main thing is to enjoy a good steam and to you can't take your mobile phone in. It's just you and the other people who are there, and you're relaxing, you're listening to your body, you're, if you're stressed or tired or you have an ache, you're getting rid of that. It's almost like a sacred space in that, you go there to really cleanse and to detox and to relax and to do all of these things that I think there are very few places in the world where you could do those sorts of things. And in Finland, of course, it's very important to note that most of these places where there are, for example, public saunas, people do have them in their homes. They're not expensive. They're open to everyone. The idea is they're accessible. It's a part of daily life. Okay, not everybody goes every day, but the idea being that it's not something that costs a lot, or that you need to join a special club or have a special outfit or do something that makes it less accessible. And they're everywhere. I mean, they're in workplaces, they're in high rises, they're in City Hall, they're in homes, they're in sports complexes, gyms, etc. But I think really, if you want to have a really true, authentic experience, the closer to nature and water that you can be, that really brings it, because it's a pure place. And by pure, I mean, you have the beautiful design, you have the wooden, the benches, you have, the bucket that has the water, but there's not a lot of stuff. You don't take, special equipment or outfits or anything. It's very minimal. And it's really about a well-designed, good wood, those sorts of things, well-functioning sauna too. That it airs out and it has all of the components, and those are very much okay. Of course, it does cost, and you invest in the proper items, but the idea being that it's minimalist. It's not about materialism. It's about going to this place that is very pared down and simple.
Yeah. Those are great points. And if anybody out in the audience does have something they want to contribute, you can always enter a question into the question and answer function, and we'll monitor that as we go along. So feel free at any point to chime in, and we'll take up questions kind of as we go along. So we want everyone to kind of engage as they can. And we encourage everyone to stay here to the end, because like I said, I have the 2 books in front of me. I'm lucky enough. But if you stay till the end, you'll be partaking in a raffle, and you must be present to win. 2 people will win Katja's books here. So please do stay till the end, and we look forward to questions as we go along here. But I think you hit on some interesting things about when the question was, what is it that makes it Finnish? And you mentioned kind of minimalist nature. Well, the steam, first of all, löyly, right?
Yeah.
We talked about in a session the other day about saunas, and I say that specifically in the US, that pop up that don't have löyly, and that's not a sauna, right? Or in the Finnish understanding, that the minimalist nature of it, the connection to nature itself. And that brings me to one topic that you talk about in both of your books. That's a really interesting concept, I think, especially in North America, maybe more specifically in the United States, where we kind of have different ideas of what personal and private and property means. Well, in Finland, you have the term, the jokamiehen oikeus, which I guess translates roughly to the every person's right. That really, I thought that I'd never really thought of that. I've thought of that in terms of nature, in terms of kind of the Finnish ideal of, going out and collecting berries and mushrooms, which would be another completely different topic. But that concept in connection to a sauna, the inclusivity of a sauna, fits really well with the overarching topic of this webinar series, which is the public sauna. So maybe you could kind of elaborate on the unique nature of that connection.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question too. And that's where, you can quickly find online a lot of history, about the sauna dates back and the roots. I mean, it's thousands and thousands of years. And, it was a place a long time ago where, babies were born and people were prepared for their final rites, because it was seen as a clean, pure place, especially in a largely agrarian society, if we're going back even further. And, there are some places where people would actually build the sauna before they built their house, which tells you how important, the role of this place where, for example, the family would gather every Saturday, for the Saturday evening sauna and those kinds of rituals. But I think the thing is, it's like many things, you can't separate them from the culture. And I think that is something, in the US, I mean, I grew up in Canada, but there are a lot of similarities where people want to have their own house, their own car, their own, the ownership and the materialism. There is a very different approach towards this idea of, for example, here in Finland, we share, nature is accessible to everybody, but also, and jokamiehen oikeus, which you pointed out as an excellent example of that, the right to roam in nature as long as you don't harm it, the right to forage for berries and stuff. But when it comes to sauna, I think this idea that we have so many public spaces that we share and we celebrate, we don't need to own them ourselves. And I wouldn't want to have a private sauna, excuse me, I always mispronounce when I'm speaking English. I wouldn't want to have a private sauna in my home just for the sake of having it, because part of what I enjoy about going and having a sauna, for example, after I go and swim at our winter swimming club is all the fabulous people that I end up talking with, or, we're just relaxing and it's almost like a campfire, where you talk about whatever's on your mind, or the politics of the day, or something that has recently happened in the news, or somebody saw a fabulous art exhibition or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so this idea of sharing and taking care of everyone, this idea that you don't need to own it or have it yourself. And actually, it's much better, particularly in these times where, we have we have soaring energy bills, electricity bills, a whole bunch of other issues that have to do with cost of living crisis. And so if you have, for example, a shared sauna, of course, the costs are much lower in terms of keeping it heated and all the upkeep and the maintenance. And I think that sense of community is so important. And that's something that I've heard from so many people, that's where they have talked about their struggles, or, shared a difficult moment, something that's happened to them, with a friend, and they wouldn't do that elsewhere.
Yeah.
But when you're pared down and, you're authentic, as it were, and you're sitting in this space, it's much easier to do.
Mm-hmm. And that really, and Kath, I do see your question in there, and we're going to get to that whole portion in a minute, but I do want to highlight this, what you're talking about, the social aspect of the sauna, right? So we talked about the jokamiehen oikeus, that it's kind of accessible to everybody. We've heard in other sessions in this webinar series that the idea of the public sauna used to be very popular, and then there was a time in Finnish history where it almost died out as a phenomenon, and is really resurging in Finland, right? With Löyly, the actual place in Helsinki, but also many other public sauna throughout the country that are kind of re-emerging. And what I really love about your books, and I can empathize with, because I'm also, Finnish American, so I kind of have the North American perspective on Finland. Finns are different outside the sauna than they are inside the sauna, right? And I think you have an example of a person from Spain, I think, that you talk about here, who said really had a hard time finding people or making really connections, then went to a public sauna and felt like, oh, wow, now I have all these friends, right? So can you talk more about that, how you experienced that? Because I think there's a lot of truth to that.
I definitely think, and I'm often asked by foreign visiting journalists who, okay, so where do I really go and talk to people? And I'm like, you have to go to a public sauna, and there are so many of them, but that's really where people open up, and people are sort of themselves. Not to say that in Finnish culture, people would spend a lot of time gesturing or pretending to be something they're not, but I think the closest example would be, the same way if you wanted to find out about England, you'd go to a pub, and you would chat with the locals, or, you find out what's going on. And I really think that it has that role. And It's that acceptable place where people are friendly and they talk to one another and accept one another, because you don't have to have, a special membership. You don't have to look a certain way. You don't have to have a certain outfit. You're just there for a good steam. And I think that is invaluable in these times where we have a lot of people trying to find connection and feeling isolated, or unaccepted or judged or whatever. So I think that's something very important. I also think that, this is not based on scientific data and research, but I would generalize and say that I think sometimes men have a more difficult time talking about what's going on and their feelings and their emotions. And I have heard so many stories about, when the men go and have a sauna, that's where they talk about the tough stuff, the relationship breakup, the work difficulties, whatever they may be. And it's a place where you do that, you're restoring mind and body, you're having a good steam, you're relaxing, you're getting rid of your work day or your work week, but also you're allowed to talk about tough stuff. And that is really, really important, I think, for a lot of people. In addition to, we have the data on the physiological benefits of a good steam and, what it does for your mental and your physical health. And to that end, a place like Oulu is, often Brits will be like, wait, you mean this is what you do on a Saturday night? Yeah, everybody, whether it's a hen party or a bachelor party or whatever, you go and meet at a wonderful, amazing place like a design sauna, and you go for dips and steams and dips and steams, and then you go and have a nice meal at the restaurant or drinks, and that is a very typical night out. And it's quite organic, if you think about it, compared to all the other things that people can do, on a Friday night or a Saturday night or whatever night of the week they're going out and meeting friends.
Absolutely. No, that's, and kind of on this public sauna thing, we do have a question here in the chat that we could take up now from Susan Puska, talking about, could you describe visiting a public sauna in Finland, what that's like? And I kind of, in our pre-discussion to this, you actually mentioned one about journalists that I think would be an interesting kind of story to tell here. But anything you have on that topic?
Oh, sure. Was that the American journalists from Dallas, that story?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing that I would say is not all, but the majority of public saunas, especially when there's mixed men and women, you keep your bathing suit on, or you can wrap a towel around yourself so you're not going in without your clothes on. And there often is, in many places like Oulu, a very international crowd. So completely understandable, that nobody, and in the Finnish sauna tradition, we don't, unless it's family, you don't have a mixed sauna. Definitely. You may with your friends if you want, but it's usually men and women go separately. But I understand very, very well that it's totally out of people's comfort zone. So you've got your bathing suit or your towel or, whatever makes you feel comfortable. And so Oulu is, for example, a design sauna complex that was started by, I believe, the previous guest. Your previous guest was Jasper? Yes.
We're having Jasper on.
You haven't had him.
He
Okay.
will be part of the series.
Okay.
So everyone should sign up for that. Go to the website and sign up. That'll be great. Yeah.
Okay. So, and just for those who don't know, Jasper Pääkkönen, or Jasper, I guess as you would pronounce it, is also a very well-known actor. I think Vikings was there's a few other things that he's been in, but fairly well known in the US and other parts of the world. Yeah. And he was one of the founders of a fabulous complex, a design complex that's right on the sea and very centrally located in Helsinki. And there are several different saunas, including a smoke sauna, and access to the sea. You can go for a dip in the Baltic Sea. And then there's a restaurant and a bar there. And usually when I'm asked to take a group from abroad, foreign journalists, I meet them and I explain what we're going to do. And I explain how important this is, how central it is in the context of Finland and Finnish culture. And for example, with a group about a year ago from Dallas, I could see that they were all looking at me like, we'd rather poke pins in our eyes than go and do this. Like, so we're going to go sit in a steamy room with a bunch of strangers, and then we're going to go into the sea, which is like about 1 degree. There's like chunks of ice floating in it. And, you know, I walked them through and I showed them the different saunas and showed them the water, and then, you know, gave them the background information on what it does. You know, how for example, the dip in the sea sets off all the happy hormones and you get your, you know, rush of endorphins and you feel great. And how when you sit in the sauna, you know, it relaxes you and, you know, you detox and sweat away everything that's bothering you. And they sort of looked at me like, okay, well, we're travel journalists. We need to try this, or we'll watch you try it. By the end of the evening, I could not get them out of the ocean, or I should say the Baltic Sea, and the saunas. They all of them, there was a group of 6, every single one of them 3 times into the water. And this was at a very cold, it was winter. And they tried out all the saunas and they really got into it and really started relaxing. And then at supper afterwards, you know, they were like a bunch of happy kids who were, you know, they were glowing, they were, you know, rosy cheeked. And not just because they felt good from having done this, you know, very relaxing thing that is good for mind and body, but also because they had gotten over their initial, like, okay, I might try this, but I'm not going to like it attitude. And then they were like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And I feel so relaxed. And one of my favorite parts was, of course, you know, the older journalists, male, who were like, take my picture, you know, when I go in. This is the first time I've ever swam in the Baltic Sea, you know, and they were so proud of themselves. And it was this wonderful feeling of like, yeah, well, sometimes when you try something, it can actually change your life for the better. And you can find this great way of self-care, of taking yourself, but also of embracing another culture, you know, something that seems really odd and foreign. And suddenly it's like, wait a minute, I'm going to be checking out the polar bear clubs in my area, or finding out where I can go and have a good steam.
Yeah. I mean, it probably just busted open their kind of cultural horizon, right? Some people Americans from Dallas doing this and then realizing they like it. And what you're hinting at here really is, to me, you know, and we're reaching about almost 30 minutes in here, which is kind of where I wanted to be with this conversation, because sauna is a huge part of it. But, and like Kath's question here, okay, you became kind of this enthusiast expert in, at least enjoyer of dipping into the cold ocean and then doing sauna. So Kath is interested in what your first experience, the first plunge was like. And I think that's going to get us into the next section of this, which has to do directly with Sisu. So we'd love to hear about your first example of your first time going in and what you thought, because you've probably made a complete 180 from that moment. But kind of with that mindset of, what does this mean for Sisu, right? Like, what is this indicative of? So tell your first story, because I think everyone wants to hear that.
Yeah, actually, it's almost exactly 10 years ago. And I was at a dinner party and there were a group of winter swimmers. And at that time I was working in news journalism and magazine journalism, and, you know, writing about all cultures, I mean, around the world, but also Finnish culture. And they just said, hey, why don't you come? We have in Finland, Valentine's Day is like a day of friendship. So Friends Day, and there's all kinds of activities. We're allowed to bring friends on that day. So why don't you come? And I thought, well, I have to try this, you know, because I don't really know that much about it, but also I've seen people doing it and, you know, wondered about this thing, but I had no idea really about the health benefits, mental and physical. So we went, it was February, it was sleeting, it was dark, it was cold, and we went to the dock. And fortunately, I had a very wonderful guide who was experienced and who just gave me, you know, the tips on what to do, and, you know, just to breathe, and that you just go into the water very carefully. You don't have to force yourself. And my friend actually, Erika, is also a psychotherapist who is right now doing one of the first pilots to see if psychotherapy and winter swimming could be combined as a mental health an approach. Yeah. So she took me there, we stood there, and I probably went in for 5 seconds, and it was like millions of pins pricking my skin. It just felt really, really cold. And I came out and I just thought, I cannot understand like why anybody would want to do this. Like, first of all, you're standing in your bathing suit, you know, in the pitch dark, it's sleeting, it's cold. But then when I came out of the water, suddenly all the parts of my body that had been in the water were sort of tingling and feeling like I had like just had an amazing massage, or you know, some kind of a painkiller that just has like wonderful effects. And so we walked back to the sauna and we sat in the sauna, and then I was like, I think I want to try that again. Like, it was really hard, and it was like, it wasn't like, oh, I want to stay in the water for ages, but I feel like something's happened to my body. And it was just this like rush of, I guess, the endorphins and then the cold shock. And essentially it went from there. I was able to join the Winter Swimming Club, which now has a waiting list of more than 100 people.
Oh my gosh.
As do many winter swimming clubs in Finland, because there's a boom going on right now, a boom in popularity. But I was able to join, and then I started going and really using it as a way for my mental and physical health. I've struggled with depression, with anxiety. And it was this way that I could go and just reset myself, and just even a dip of like 30 seconds to a minute, and just leave, you know, all your stress, your worries, everything in the sea, and then come out, have a sauna, warm up, and then be like new. Yeah. And so that was really my start. And it took several months before I was able to actually get into the water and, you know, swim. In the beginning, it was just like, and then it went from there. And then I started doing all the research into, okay, so what are the physiological, like what's the science and the data behind this? Why do I feel so good? You know, what's happening mentally and physically? And then it went from there.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it is, right? You call it in the book a couple of times the hormone storm, right? It's a natural way to unleash this hormone storm that really is proven to cure your physical ailments, because that's what these hormones are doing, but also the mental side of it, right? So it's not, like you said several times, but I think that's what sometimes people miss. It's not just the physical part of it. It's the mental part of it that you've done. So even if you started with a 1 second dip, right? And then maybe you get to 30 seconds after 6 months of winter, right? And you think, oh, that's cold. But it's the building up to that, right? That it's that you can get over these things, and that it's a mental, that's like the path in your brain of getting over something difficult, and continuing to do that fortifies your mental health.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's this, once I started finding out more about it and realizing like, wow, you know, 30 seconds to a minute dip in water that's on average 4 degrees Celsius or less. I think the science shows that even 10 degrees Celsius or less like is cold water. Just 30 seconds to a minute, and you basically, the happy hormones kick in, the oxytocin, the dopamine, the serotonin, all of those things. But also, you know, your heart starts beating, your blood is flowing, you know, you're getting all of this stuff in this very quick, fast way. Like, I'd be hard pressed to get the same effect so quickly, even if I went to the gym and worked out for an hour, or I did something else. Yeah. And then because we do have a growing body of research about the benefits of cold, and how, you know, this idea of cross adaptation is if you stress your body a little bit in a healthy way, you can build up your resilience to all the other stressors that life throws at you. And that is something that for me was like, wait, if I go for a cold dip every morning or every day, I have a tool to try to keep my mental health and my physical health in check. and it's quite easy, and it doesn't take a lot of time, and it doesn't have any bad side effects, you know.
Right. I mean, it might be addictive in some way,
Yeah.
but the natural, right? It's almost this nature's medicine. This is what nature in the North has given people, right, as a way to be able to live in the North. So I think that there's a super interesting connection to place, right? People and place, that you're using what nature has given you, right, in that part of the world to live better.
Exactly. And then this whole idea of Sisu, which is a word that I essentially translated as a unique type of Finnish fortitude, resilience, courage, grit in the face of challenges, big or small. And the origins of the word go back 500-600 years, but I think it's kind of a mindset that anybody anywhere can take on and learn about. And I guess in the context why winter swimming and having a sauna, I think, is maybe not to Finns as much, but to anyone coming from another culture where having a sauna is not something that they've grown up with. The idea of, okay, what do we have? Instead of us sitting around in Finland and going, it's not beach weather, we can't have cocktails, let's just, pull the covers over our head. It's like, wait a minute. We're surrounded by water that we can swim in. We're surrounded by saunas. We have this relationship with winter that in many ways is very productive and positive. We ski, we walk, I bike in the winter time. I just have winter tires on my bike. So the snow and the cold weather doesn't prevent me from doing that. So doing something like winter swimming is a good example of exercising your sisu, because you're doing something that is difficult. It's not your first instinct, especially on a cold morning when it's dark and maybe it's snowing or there's a blizzard, and then you go and do this thing. And then it makes you, once you do it, you feel so much better. And you've also built up that resilience. Like, hey, now I don't feel so tired or so stressed or so down. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And this Sisu piece, I want to read a couple of things from the book that I think are really interesting and would love to hear you elaborate more on. But Stephen Leppälä in the messages here said the ice hole is called Avanto in Finland. Yes, that's correct. And in the in your book here, you actually include a little glossary of some Finnish words, and Avanto is in there because that's an essential Finnish word you need to know when talking about this kind of stuff. But that Sisu piece, the building resilience, right? These little steps into something big. I'm just going to read a quick thing you wrote from the first book here. It's a question you were asking yourself. I'm looking at my screen over here. So is Sisu a mental power or a muscle that you flex? Where does it come from? Is it a cultural construct, part of a country brand or slogan? Or, as I suspect, a sort of mind and body attitude that anyone anywhere can tap into? And that's really the first time I read that, thinking, coming from like Finnish roots, it's like, oh, Sisu is something Finnish, which I don't want to challenge. I think the fact that Finnish has a word for it that no other place really necessarily has speaks to that, but that it's a muscle that you could flex to build on, right? So anybody could actually develop Sisu if they might not even know that it's called Sisu, right? But they're building up into something. So I love that, those questions and getting there. So yeah, I guess the question with that is, how did you come to the idea that, it can be something that anybody can develop, or maybe everybody has Sisu, it's just about flexing that muscle?
That's a really good question too. And I think part of it was, the research and interviewing people. And, there's a lot of the most recent research by Amelia Lahti, who has done what I believe is the world's first PhD on the topic of Sisu. And she has really brought Sisu into the realm of positive psychology and brought some new, I think there's perhaps an older school idea that Sisu was something very hard and, has to do with war and Olympic victories and very kind of, and that this idea that in positive psychology, like you can actually set yourself up to do hard things. And sometimes that means doing hard things means you learn to say no, or, do whatever is the best thing for everybody or for yourself. But this idea of being resilient and strong really, I would say, largely came from my own struggles and realizing that if I did things, just simple things that were so obvious in Finland, like winter swimming, having a sauna, riding my bike year round, and I'm not saying anything original here. Loads of other people have come up with this in around the world in other cultures, but you move your body, you move your mind, or change your mind. And this idea that rather, I had grown up in a very consumer, you buy everything, this, what I call, the culture of convenience. And I realized it was killing me. The worst thing for me would be to have a lifestyle where I drove in a car or was driven and, went from one place to the next and didn't have any connection with nature or the physicalness, whatever that may be. And I think that that's something when we're talking about well-being, a lot of places in the world have gone so far away from, the really basic things like walking, eating fruits and vegetables. It doesn't need to be a complicated diet or a complicated routine or an expensive one or something that you drive to, 3 hours away because it's a special gym or whatever. And if those things work for people, that's great. But I think that there is a lot of wisdom in the Finnish way of life, because the idea is it's accessible to everyone, and it's that connection to nature, whether you're winter swimming or having a sauna or whatever you're doing. It doesn't have to be complicated, and you get immediate results.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be small, but and then that reminds me of the other conversation. This is from your second book about Sisu. You said, I think it's fascinating from what I know of Sisu, right? We have a comment here from anonymous attendee. I have heard from Finnish cousins that Sisu is formed because your ancestors got you this far. I think that's a huge part of the Finnish idea of Sisu, right? Like there's this cultural, historical piece to it. Like they got us this far, by gosh, I'm going to keep going too.
Yeah.
So there, and the fact that that's being used in positive psychology today as an area of research is so interesting to me. And so in your book, it says that Sisu falls into two categories: beneficial, allowing you to tap into your unknown strengths, and harmful, forcing you to accept challenges that are maybe too great a task that you aren't equipped to succeed in. And then there's a quote, I think this was from Emilia Lahti. I'm not entirely sure, but you could probably correct me. What is it that keeps your lights burning and hopes during the dark night of the soul? How might we use this knowledge to alleviate the pain of those who are currently suffering? So that's that's comes from a dark place, but it goes to this positive space, right? Like what is it that keeps you going through all of that? What did your ancestors do to get you here, as the comment from the chat? So any other comments that you had on that it really is positive and negative Sisu?
Yeah, and that was Elizabeth Lahti's comment. I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful phrase, because it really is that idea of, you can choose to go towards the light or the darkness. Mm-hmm. And this idea that, again, culturally, this idea of working together and this history, your relatives, your family has gotten you this far. Again, this idea of we rather than me. So what is best, for sustainability, for other people, for children, for future generations, for nature, not what do I want right now? Or I think that is very culturally specific if you talk about Sisu. But also this idea of, you can use it. Yes, be careful. Don't push yourself too hard and burn out, or, do things that are hurting other people or, the world or whatever. But this idea that you can use it as a way to, for example, in sauna, everyone is accepted the way they are. There isn't like, oh, I'm sorry, you're not skinny enough, or you're not tall enough, or you're not this or that, or you don't have the right outfit, and that kind of acceptance and authenticity, and this is who I am, and I'm in this space where everybody accepts me exactly the way I am, and I don't need to have you know, a job title, or it doesn't matter how I got here, you know, whether I came by bicycle or car or whatever. And I think that is really invaluable in this day and age, in many parts of the world. And that goes back to the idea of Sisu, is like, what can I do? You know, I have to put on my own my own oxygen mask before I can help other people. But what can I do to help the world, and to help also to be a stronger, more resilient person myself, but in the bigger picture, not just for the sake of or my gains. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's such a fascinating way to look at it, the way that Emilia Lahti described that. And there's another part of this, and you hinted at it already when we were talking about the origins of Sisu, you know, where she's a Sisu researcher, right? So she says, when people talk about Sisu and they're trying to describe it, they point to their gut, like it's literally in there, not in our heads or minds. The clue is in the word sisus, which in Finnish is literally the interior or inside of a thing or being. This hit me that Sisu is like a somatic embodiment of mental toughness. And so I think that was another thing, right? So we're talking about these positive things, the resiliency aspect of it. And I think in English speakers, there's often this heart and head, you know, binary that, you know, what's driving you, your head, your wisdom, or your heart, your emotions, or your passion. Sisu is something even different than that, right? It might be something from the stomach, from the guts, from inside, right? So I don't know, has that helped you think about it in any kind of different way?
Yeah, because again, I think it's that, you know, you come as you are and you're accepted as you are. So it's like I have a 13-year-old son, and we were having a conversation about beauty the other day, and he asked me, you know, which country in the world has the most beautiful women? And I said, you know, everyone or many people may have an opinion on that, but I don't think you can quantify that, because we all have really different tastes and aesthetics about what beauty is. But I said, you know, I think the key thing is it's not something you can describe. Like, you might meet somebody who's a supermodel, and then they might turn out to be the nastiest piece of work. And you might meet someone who is not, at first, does not fit your idea of beauty. And then you get to know them, and they are the most beautiful person in the world. And that's kind of like, for example, the sauna. You really get to know people. Winter swimming, same thing, because it's this authentic thing that you're doing together. And it's your interior, your sisus,
Right,
in a way that
from
matters
within.
much more than, you know, whether you look a certain way or you have materialistic attributes or whatever. And I think that's something that is really, again, so culturally specific.
Because I remember this ties us back to the beginning of this, the cultural specificity of it. I remember when we were having our pre-discussion, my mom was in the house kind of doing her thing, and she's from Finland. And you know, we had talked about this exact thing. I was kind of thinking maybe, well, it's interesting. Sisu might not be just a Finnish thing. The word certainly is, naming it is a Finnish thing, but the idea of Sisu might not be just Finnish, right? It comes from within a person. And she kind of pushed back after. She's like, I don't know, I think Sisu might be sort of a Finnish thing. And so I just want to be, it is culturally specific that we're talking about it, because we would be unable to talk about this in clearer terms in English, because how you spend pages and pages trying to identify what it even is that we're talking about in Finnish. You have the word Sisu that people sort of understand. So I think that's an interesting kind of connection. It's like, yeah, it's very cultural specific, but it's also universally human that you feel.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, historically, probably, you know, one of the most cited examples, of course, is a wartime situation with the then former Soviet Union. But, you know, part of the key is not only did the Finnish army hold off, you know, the Soviets, who were like 3 times, they had more of everything and more men. And part of it was through just being smart, you know, wearing, for example, white camouflage when it was snowy. But, you know, the key is in the setting. You know, it was winter, it was cold, it was almost minus 40 degrees Celsius, which is, I went for a run this morning in minus 12. And, I can tell you that that's already, I mean, obviously I'm not a military person or a soldier or anything, but, it is tied to the context as well.
Yeah.
I mean, Finland does have a very difficult history. We have a neighbor, we won't go into that conversation, but we have a very challenging neighbor, let's say that, country neighbor.
Yeah.
But also, yes, now we all have heated homes and Finland is a relatively wealthy country. The standard of living is very high in international comparisons, and we have 3.3 million saunas to go and warm up in. But the coldness, the location, all of these things at a time when we didn't jet from Helsinki to New York in 8 hours, when people didn't have all of the mod cons that they have. The history is very much tied to all kinds of challenges, and one of them being cold weather. So I do think Sisu is also, because of those things, the mindset is about, this we collective and working together to try to figure things out and looking for solutions. And that is something you can't separate from the country and the culture.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue into the kind of last point that I wanted to touch on with Sisu, and that I get from you that, okay, so Sisu, you kind of read some warnings out there from people. Oh my gosh, Sisu is kind of on the decline in the Finnish population, or young people today in Finland maybe don't have as much Sisu as earlier. And I think what you're pointing at is the key. It's completely contextualized, right? In the winter war situation, Sisu certainly looks a lot different than Sisu in today's, kind of Europeanized kind of life, right? And I think that dipping in the cold water, that's certainly a thing that's popped up in the late 20th century, really, and into the 21st century, that probably didn't exist in the same way that it did as kind of a thing you do for health and with your friends and that kind of thing. But like that could be an example of like a modern day Sisu. I don't know if you would see people doing that in Maine in the US or the eastern shores of Canada, dipping in the ocean and going into the sauna in the same way. So kind of that changing context thing, it'd be interesting if you could elaborate more on that. It's a context that determines
sure. And though
like.
I would say that there is a history of cold water dipping that dates back hundreds of years. And in fact, the sauna, it was the way to cool off in between sessions in the sauna.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, this idea of it is much more of the last, I guess, 100 years that there have been these official winter swimming associations that have popped up. But I would say when it comes to Sisu, I would say one thing is that there is a lot of research that's being done, and like many words and ideas, over time they change. I would say that the international interest in Sisu is huge, but I think the Finns sometimes in their kind of, no, ei tässä mitään, kind of, like there's nothing really here. It's something that seems obvious, but also that people may not have an interest in as much in terms of keeping up with what's going on, because it's like, the British, keep a stiff upper lip. I mean, if you were brought up with that, it's like, oh, don't say that to me kind of thing. So I think one thing is it depends who you're talking to. I think the international interest in Sisu is massive. I have many people send me pictures of tattoos that they have gotten of Sisu, for example. And so far, not one Finn has sent me a picture. They've all come from abroad. So I think that's something important to keep in mind. But I would also say when it comes to the cold water swimming, a group of women who I think have more Sisu than I've ever seen are the women in their 80s who go for a dip every morning in our downtown Helsinki neighborhood, and they just Sisu it up, rain, shine, sleet, whatever, and they go for their dip and then they continue on their day. And I think it's part of the secret to, in their 70s and 80s, they're rocking it out there, because they're taking care of their mind and their body, but also they're doing something that is not, going for an icy dip in the sea is not kind of the first thing that you would think to do.
Right.
Many people would think to do. Yeah.
That is
so
interesting.
Yeah. So it depends who the storyteller is and who you ask about Sisu, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that it's so individualized, and talking about 70 and 80-year-olds kind of doing the dip in the ocean. It reminds me of my own grandma, right? Mimma, Sirkka,
Oh,
my grandma,
yeah.
yeah, in Finland, who she's in her 90s now, but she up through her 80s would go in, usually in the summer, every day, go
Yeah.
swimming, a dip in, which is still cold water, you know, compared to the air temperature. It's a cold dip in the ocean. And she still talks about, right, in her 90s, oh, I just wish I could go
Yeah.
swimming. It's something that she used as a way to, like you said, stay healthy, stay sharp. And in her 90s, she just can't do that anymore. But it's part of
Yeah.
what she considered to be her daily healthy life.
And that thing of using, blue and green therapy, nature
Yes.
and water, which, we've come from nature and from water. And I think a lot of us are not feeling well because we, divorced nature. We don't
Yeah.
have enough to do with it. And it's this really interesting, easy way that gives you so much. And when you don't have that connection anymore, of course, I understand, sometimes people can't physically or for health reasons or whatever, but, the longer you keep your relationship with nature in some way, shape, or form,
Yeah.
the better you feel.
Absolutely. And I love, we're getting to the end of the time here, but you kind of talk about the Finnish view of the forest, right? The forest could be a babysitter. It's not a dangerous place. It's a place that surrounds us. Europe's kind of largest uninterrupted forest it's in Finland, and then other parts of the world, justifiably so, because things are just different. The forest it's kind of scary. You don't know what could happen in the forest. You would rather be shut out away from the forest, or it's just simply a place you go on vacation. So kind of the idea that, I mean, proximity has something to do that, but that you didn't necessarily view the forest and nature that way when you lived in Vancouver, which everyone thinks is one of the most beautiful places in the world. It's where the mountains meet the sea. It's covered by forest, but it was a different relationship, right? That culturally to the forest, maybe, than Finland.
Yeah, and the key is, of course, Vancouver looks great on a postcard, and it is a wonderful place, but most of those places are at the end of a car, like a long car ride. And so A, you have to have a car, but B, time, because the distances are long, but C, you also, with the traffic and everything, this idea of going and hiking the mountains and then swimming in the ocean in one day actually requires quite a lot more. It requires money, it requires time, and it requires access. And that is something that there was just a report actually that came out about how few in like Vancouver proper and in the city center, how few green spaces there are, like public parks and other things. And I think Vancouver is wonderful in many ways, but often my relationship with nature, it was a place you went at the end of a car trip, and it was a destination. It was, and I still find it when I visit, it's much harder to incorporate it into my everyday life. And that, of course, depends where you live and what your resources are and all of that. And I think the big thing for me was this idea of lähiluonto, this nearby nature, that everywhere there's like swaths of green, there's parks, there's water, there's lakes, there's sea. And, just today, for example, my son is on his school break. And so we took a break, I took a work break, and we walked to his favorite place for lunch. And we walked through the sea, through a park, we stopped to play in the snow. We did all these things, and they were all part of the 10-15-minute walk to where we're going for lunch. And I would be hard pressed to recreate that in a capital city in North America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that rings very true. I'm sitting in Southern California right now, which also has beautiful natural beauty all over the place. But yeah, it would require sitting in the traffic to get there, and then I mean, you're right. It's a whole ordeal. I think that's a super interesting point. We're up on the hour here. So I do want to just look in the comments here. Kath has another really interesting thing about the sauna, which involves her immigrant Finnish grandparents in Detroit, they actually had a sauna in their basement where they charged 25 cents, including the sandwich. So maybe compare that to the luxury of Lulu these days. So they thought that they were going to, for hygiene and nutrition, but they actually got the mental and social aspects out of it. So I think that's a really good, from the 1940s, you know, connection today. And Jeff Smith gives us another idea of a positive reinforcement of Sisu. He grew up with it being a positive thing, and notes that in Japan there's a similar word, but it always seems to be used with like this head down, making it through adversity thing, whereas the Sisu is a little more kind of flexible. It could be very much positive thing. Okay, I like that. Let's see, recording will be available. That was asked. It will be on our YouTube after this. So that's good. How about a face down snow angel or a roll in the snow with no water plunges available? Exactly. No one's going to go roll around in the.
But actually, one of the women who I swim with in the mornings, who is, I think she's in her 70s. I don't know her exact age. She will, after her cold dip, go and make a snow angel if there's fresh snow. And she's been trying to encourage us all week to do the same thing. And some of us younger ones are like, the cold water dip is enough. But this is our challenge actually for this next week, is to take her up on her making the snow angel in the fresh snow, because apparently she says that takes the cold to a totally new level.
A real cold snow angel making.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, these have been really good comments. If anyone has more, please feel free. I think we're going to take a quick kind of wrap up here. I do want to really thank Kath Uusitalo for doing a lot of the organization on Sauna Week. It's been a great week of conversation with more to come. Jessica at the Finlandia Foundation National Office for helping get everything technically set up. Anne-Marie for continuing to push the Finlandia Foundation forward and bringing together different actors. Katja, to you for making the time. It's getting to be a little later in Finland, and you still made the virtual journey across the Atlantic here to be with us. Want to encourage everyone to check out these two books and keep an eye out for the new book coming out, From Cold to Hot.
I think it's called, right now, I think we're calling it The Power of Hot and Cold, from Sauna to Sea, the Finnish way to a happy, healthy life. I think that's the working title right now. So, but
fantastic.
We're still working on it. So it may change a bit, but that is the essential.
Well, I'll be interested to see it. There's obviously a huge interest internationally in topics Finnish, which is what you're able to kind of harness and tell those stories. So congratulations to you, Katja. And there was a question about, the preference for wood burning or electric sauna and which one feels more authentic. That might be a good closer for Katja in all of your sauna experience, what you would prefer, or what you would say to that.
That's a really good question, because it depends where you are. And what you have access to. So for example, in the city, the place where I swim regularly, we just have the electric. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I would say that probably a lot of people would say wood burning is a little bit more authentic. And you can feel the difference. Just I was going to make a very bad comparison, but yeah, it is a little bit closer to nature, but then we have to remember as well that there is a lot of data about the effects of burning wood, which we need to do the sustainability side. So I'm going to say, if there is the option for a wood burning and or an old smoke sauna, I will definitely go for that. But I am very happy with the regular city electric saunas as well.
I tend to echo that. I don't have as much sauna experience, but the wood burning ones that I have been in, I really noticed, I was like, wow, the quality of the heat does tend to be slightly different. Not as harsh, maybe. I don't know if that others have that similar experience.
Yeah, it's like it's a softer heat.
Yeah.
But having said that, we, for example, the ones that I go to fairly regularly are electric, and they're magnificent, and also what we would have to do logistically, for example, our winter swimming club is run by volunteers.
Mhm.
So what we would have to do, I mean, we basically remotely turn on the saunas. We do a whole bunch of things that would not be possible if we needed to have somebody there stoking the fire, so to speak, or watching out and making sure that, so it enables us to have a completely different and longer sauna experience. Yeah.
For sure. Back to
Excellent.
that inclusivity piece, but okay, thank you. I think we're kind of at the end of the time here with you today. Again, huge thanks to Katja.
Thank you, Katja. It's a late evening time for you, but thank you for joining us. And thanks, Tommy. You really plunged into this. You did good.
Thank you. It was my pleasure to be here.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, hey.
Bye.
Hey, hey. Bye.